got our panel here today, and we're glad all my young people are back today. So shout hooray! Then you got your GCSEs, and also who are the football lovers here?
Oh, we are all here.
Football lovers are here as well.
Yeah,
England won what?
Yeah, England
was
won.
it 5?
6-1.
6-1.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, 6-1. That is
Yes.
great news. Even though I'm not a football lover, I'm supporting England.
Of course.
For now, I'm just really for them to do well. So we thank God for that. Thank you very much for joining us again. It's Community Welfare Matters 6:18. You are with us till 8 o'clock today. And we've got a full house today. We've got myself, Mama T. Original. My name is Mrs. Tracy Minta, and we've got Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam, do you want to introduce yourself? And then you want to introduce yourselves. I'm not going to introduce you, ladies.
Hi guys, I'm Trish and I'm back.
Back with a vengeance, yeah.
Ella, Rhoda, introduce.
Hi guys, I'm Ella.
So we've got Ella as well. Ella hasn't joined us before, so this is the first time, and that's great. It's great to have you here. We've got Stephen.
Hi guys.
And we've got Rhoda. Okay, so it's good to have a full house. Our topic for today is physical chastisement. So I've been told to break down chastisement. You know what I mean? Chastisement. So it's more like a physical punishment. It's basically physical punishment. And if you read your Bibles, you will know it's chastisement means what? Yeah. Yeah. So, and physical aspect of it. So that's basically what it is. So today I remember I've got a lot of stories when we started thinking about the topic. I have a lot of stories about physical chastisement. When I was young, beating, my parents didn't think beating was anything. My parents are not here, so we can talk about that. I'm free to talk about that. And I know I used to have caps over my head. If I misbehave, my dad will hit my head with a cap, bang, just like that. So, so the question we're asking today is, does it work? Does it work? Does physical chastisement or physical punishment work at all? You think it doesn't work?
I think it works like at a certain age. For example, when you're younger, we're not like too young, but when you're younger, right, and you're getting disciplined like that, you'll know, oh, I felt the pain, I'm not going to do it again. But for example, if it's like, let's say like 15 or up, and they're like mature, well,
15.
not even matured, but
Not 15, I think from when you double digits, no, 11 up. 10 up, done.
If you're at an age of understanding.
yeah, exactly. If you're at an age of understanding, I don't think it works anymore. It's just one of them ones where the children's just like, why are you beating me for?
No, and it can make the child even more worse.
Yeah, it can make them worse instead of trying to discipline them for their better. It could just make them rebel or take that out on people, like, let's say in society back that, oh, my parents hit me, they done this and that's me, so I can do it to you.
Oh, and it can also make a child angry, which then they could take that back into school. And let's say that a person is always fighting. And this could be the cause of that could be because their parents were hitting them all the time, so that you get the impact on society.
It's nice to hear all the
Yeah,
informal
it's
stories.
nice.
Yeah,
It's nice to talk about impact, which is really good.
we'll be talking about impact
Yeah,
as well.
because Rhoda have said something which is quite interesting. Oh, sorry, Trish started. You are talking about age. And this is what we all have to understand as we have technological age and all that. Why is it okay for you to hit a 2-year-old, but not okay to hit 11? Yeah? Because one way children learn, and we all learn, especially children, is by example. So you hit a 2-year-old, he's going to hit the brother who is 3 or the brother who is 2. So physical chastisement, or let me start that one, physical punishment. Once you start, yes, as Auntie said, some time ago, we were brought up in Africa, a rural environment where some of us, I will tell you my story as we go along the line. My father is also not here. Bless him. So he was a welfare officer, but he did one to me. I was never wrong.
My father was a welfare officer as well.
Yeah. So we will talk about that one. But what is important is that we need to learn that we have to challenge this issue about how you can do it to a child, but not as you grow, because you're going to fight back.
Was that your contribution? You said you can hit a little one.
Yeah.
But you can't.
But
hit
I
an
don't
old one.
think I don't think it's appropriate to be hitting like 2-year-olds or one,
That's
because
the
No, it
first
shouldn't be
lesson.
appropriate to
Yeah.
hit anyone at all.
Yeah.
Cause no, I'm not gonna lie. Some parents, they think that they're hitting their child, like they think they're hitting it soft, but then you don't know. One day you can hit their child in the wrong area, and then something bad could happen to them. So you shouldn't hit your children at all.
Yeah.
And there's other discipline, like taking phones, grounding them. I'm not gonna lie. Like people around my age, 15, 16, if they were grounded, I don't think barely anyone sneaks out nowadays. So they won't really sneak out like that. They'll stay home and cry, but they won't like do anything bad.
Oh, they'll cry. So you're gonna tell us what ways are more effective in terms of the punishment.
I think in
Phone.
today's society it's the phone, because
I know it's
that's
the
what
phone,
we're on the most. So if you take it's like
a killer.
you're not taking our lives, but taking what we use majority of the time.
It's like my mom taking my makeup. Like if you take,
I don't care about
no,
it.
okay, but phone is most. Because let's say like, it's just phone. Like when you take phone, that's discipline. That I think that's the best discipline you can ever do. Cause
Even the simplest.
So what? The 2-year-old doesn't have a phone.
okay, then I think
just shouting at them or sending them to the
Shouting.
No, wait, stop. I'm not gonna lie.
If you say shouting, because that's the other one I had
Yeah.
issues with.
Maybe if you take it one by one. So take some
So
examples.
we'll go back and describe what physical chastisement means.
And discipline.
Because
So that
I
maybe
want-
if you can start with discipline and
Because I
move
wanted
to-
us to have the informal chat first, for us to break the ice and talk about what you people think about all of this and heating and all of that. But let's just define what the chastisement is, or the physical chastisement. Uncle, you want to take it, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, I got a definition for discipline here, but if you have because I think
there's one chastisement says is the act of scolding or punishing someone. I've explained that to you already. If you talk back to your stern teacher, you won't be surprised by the chastisement that follows. So your teacher can chastise you. It's not necessarily a physical chastisement. There's chastisement, and then there's physical chastisement. Yeah. So you get the scolding and telling off, and the shouting, as you people describe it. That's the chastisement. However, when it becomes physical, that is what we're talking about today. Physical chastisement.
So the physical could be somebody using an implement, maybe the hand.
Yeah.
Using something to hit you. Sometimes people throwing things, and that's where it goes in. Where when you have children, and in any home environment, people learn, people observe.
Yeah.
So if you're an adult or if you are a young person, and once your brother or something does something and you lose it and you take something and you throw, it could catch up. Somebody could
Be hurt.
And those are the things sometimes when people have anger issues or they have a way of not being able to control the environment, they do without even noticing. So the next thing is that anything around there, whether it's hot water or something,
they just throw.
And sometimes the person you are aiming at might not be there. Yeah. So we are talking about our environment. So you take it from that, and it could be very, very dangerous for whoever is there, including the person you are aiming at.
That's very good. So I mean, now if you look at if we come to let's look at physical hitting. That's what you said. What entails physical hitting? What I've got here is shaking.
Yeah.
If you shake somebody, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a child. Yeah. 0 to 18. That's what we're talking about. If you shake them, you kick, you punch, you slap, throw, you pull their hair when you are fighting and you're pulling hair, and burning the child with scalding hot water, which people do. And
people
other hot
sometimes
objects.
they smoke.
People use iron.
And you take and just by the time
people use iron as well to do it, to burn children as well. And padding. They said padding isn't considered as an abuse as long as it is reasonable and does not cause any injury to the child.
What is padding?
What is padding? Yeah, it says spanking or padding.
Yeah.
Spanking.
So hitting.
To spank a child.
It's not really-
So if they say padding,
It's like once.
yeah, but the issue here, this brings us to the issue that we're going to discuss. In the UK, this is controversy. There are no laws that says you should not hit your child, right? But there are laws in so many countries that says you can't hit your child. But in the UK, it's not. But the UK says when it's reasonable chastisement. What is called reasonable chastisement? So, one may ask, to what extent is this reasonable chastisement? To what extent? Because for me, if what may be serious to me may not be serious to you. You see, so that's my argument. In the nature of work that we do, if somebody says, "Oh, but I just spanked him," or "I just spanked the child," but then you can see they got an object, and what comes up most is wooden spoon. People use wooden spoon to hit their children, and that if you do that, you get into trouble at all. So using objects to hit your child as well, that becomes an issue for us, doesn't it, Uncle?
Yeah, and I think one of the things we also look at and consider is, as I said earlier, in terms of environment. So sometimes, going back to the issue about reasonable chastisement or reasonable, if you have a child, the other day I was driving somewhere and the child was with the mom. By the time the father realized, the child was running to the father across the road, right? And I blame the parents, yeah? Or it could be accidental because the child just saw the father was just running. So when the mother picked up the child, was running to, or they were both running because the child was crossing the road. The mother lost it. Yeah, and I could see the mother shaking and like.
So she's trying to protect the child.
Yeah. And sometimes these are the things you do, and you could see that because I was able to see. I stopped, and somebody could have run behind me because I wasn't even looking at who was behind me because it was saved life. So sometimes they were blaming this one was cursing, and anyway. The long and short is that things do happen, but if you as a parent go on to hit the child, then you are losing it. Yeah, you can't discipline a child. This was a child. It wasn't like because you could see that, and those are the things we have to learn as parents. These things do happen. How do you manage it? It's different from a child who has gone to the shop and maybe pick up a Swiss and it's on the floor and you have lost it because the camera is looking at you and you whack because that also could be disciplined. Was it right to do that? How old is the child? So I think what we need to think about this. Assuming that somebody is going to spank the child as you use, I would not recommend it. But sometimes it's reactionary, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you all have to think about it. And I'm not going to sit down here to say, I'll do it this way, you do it this way. No. I think it's about sometimes when we are angry or we are in circumstance and we are acting, we got to all learn. It could be anybody. It's not like nobody sit down there and plan these things. I was thinking of this child, and that was a typical example. She was running to the road, and you have a right to protect your child. And if you lose it by maybe shaking, why didn't that? You could have killed me or something. But it's age.
The risky thing, I mean, as a parent, what I notice is that if you're angry, don't spank your child.
Yeah.
Don't hit your child when you're angry.
Or shake.
Because if you're angry, you will react so badly that I think it's best to walk away and then come back later. So in a situation where you have to save the child. That I think that wasn't anger. That was more of fear and anxiety and reactionary in terms of trying to save your child before the car hits the child. That's a different thing. But even then, you grab the child, you don't hit. At that time, it takes time to learn these things. Because we in our generation, we've learned these behaviors and we have to unlearn them. This is how we've grown up. We've grown up with beatings and hitting and punching and kicking. You think you think you're fighting your parent. We don't fight our parents. I dare not fight my parents, but most of the time I'm beaten and kicked. I was beaten and kicked. You know, I remember I used to live with my stepmom, and I was told to clean the floor, and I wouldn't clean because a bit stubborn. I wouldn't clean because I said that I shouldn't. It's not me that should be doing that. And also, when they cooked the food last time, they didn't give me, so I'm not going to clean. And when my dad was told, he came in the kitchen and he just hit me with a cup, a tea cup and things over my head and punched me and all of that nonsense that we do.
And that was in Africa.
And that was in Africa.
And some years ago.
And some years ago.
If
So
you
we
will
as-
find the local service and say,
yeah,
come and
exactly.
serve me. I know.
So we as adults, we've learned these things and we need to unlearn them
Yeah.
as we bring our children up. There's been ways as well, forms of this discipline that are not acceptable in this country, and that I've seen has come to the table a lot for us, like putting ginger in a child's buttocks. Have you heard of any stories?
Yeah.
Has
Oh.
anybody heard stories?
Or sometimes parents can even use it as a threat. And
If there's common using it as a threat, people's children have been removed from them for
Yeah.
threatening.
and
Believe
there
me,
have been issues where if a child is used to that, I know of children in school, where a sibling has said something like that, and one they said to you that you see, daddy or mommy will
put ginger
and
in
the
your
child wets
bum-bum.
themselves, and that's a typical sign of something was happening to the
It's
child.
child before.
Yeah.
That's a child.
So,
something's happened to the child. So
usually
you
when
see,
you are talking about discipline or physical chastisement, sometimes if a child, if especially the child follows up to say, because I've done this, I'm not going to go home, that could be used as a way of somebody saying that this child is refusing to go home because he or she feels that once they go home, they will be physically chastised or they will be punished in a way physically, something like that.
Yeah, because I think in our community as well, our first response to discipline is hate. Mostly is physical. Our first response is to hate, to shout, as you said. That's why these days I notice that young people use, I'm learning that, because what they do is that if you're talking to them, they use the term shout at me.
Yeah, why are you shouting?
Why are you shouting at me?
Yeah.
But it's about chastisement. When you're chastising them, they say, why are you shouting at me? Your mom will shout at you. But actually what they're trying to say is your mom will tell you off. So it took me a long time to process that. Then I'll say, but I'm not shouting. For me, shouting means raising your voice.
Oh, and sometimes, they use that term to say, why are you raising your voice? And sometimes you are getting heated. And sometimes you do it unconsciously, So as you raise your voice, it becomes a physical discipline towards the child. And what is interesting, when we talk about the age, which Trish said initially, Trish was talking about, was giving a variation, so from 2 up to 11. But what is interesting is that you realize that most of our children, when they can say no, or when they can say, I'm not doing it, and they walk away,
You think so?
and they walk away and you start pushing it, that's where you have conflict. Yeah,
So, but uncle, if a child, you see Stephen's comment, he says, not my child. I'd like to be around. I pray to God that I'm around to see you and your children. You're telling me not my child. And all our children think they can become better. They will become better parents than us. They think they'll become better parents than us. Because you think that if your child says no, that's it. But for us, and you people call us AF parents or African parents or AF parents. It's not. The first response is obviously physical, but then if I'm talking to you and you're talking back
or
screaming and shouting back at me, that's not how I grew up.
But Auntie, I don't think that should result in the parent physically punishing them. I think it should, because I'm not gonna lie, if the parent and that child's being obviously disobedient and shouting at the parent, that parent could do a sign. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there's some parents that give a look and their children know. Okay, never mind then. Like their children know not to go that far.
If
you understand, like if
isn't it outside?
No, it's inside as well. Like if let's say
it's inside as well, but it happens
more outside. But even
outside.
inside, because I'm not gonna inside. I don't think like let's say you're my mum and I'm shouting at you. No,
Yeah,
she'll
it
give
does
me,
happen
like, a
inside.
firm look.
It's a warning. It's a warning
Yeah. They'll be
sign.
like, oh, okay. I don't think they should.
It's a warning sign. Then
Yeah.
if you carry on, then I'm sorry,
Danger,
you're getting
danger zone.
Danger.
Yeah.
You know you're
Yeah.
entering the danger zone.
Very good. So, the example Rhoda gave example is very good. We all have to find clues within our environment. With the children, it's like I as a child, when I know my father says Kofi Ajay, I'm in trouble. Yeah?
When
The
mom
voice
says my full
alone,
name.
Kofi, then you know something good is coming. When they say Kofi Ajay, then we say there's trouble. So sometimes that alone
You
is
need
first
to know-
sign.
yeah.
Second sign, depending on the age, you go out, Kweku. Kweku, or you are raising it, yeah. So the Kweku news that mommy is getting, then you come back. So you train your children even from home.
Yeah.
Those are small clues, and sometimes very good. We have opportunity for children, depending upon the age, you develop it. We all have to do it differently. There are some children who are not here because they got other illness like autism and other things which we might bring in, so that their behavior, no matter what, if they haven't taken their medication or if they drank some type of coke or something, they become hyperactive, and you run around there. And when they come, so we all have to know our children, know the way we bring them up, and some of them, people say things. We are all different. We all different differently. So what we all have to learn, as young persons, as parents, as carers, is how we bring these children up in our environment and build it up. And we all know our children, sometimes they go some places and they are good as gold. You go and leave them to somebody.
Because, especially for me, your child goes to school, they know how to behave at school.
Yeah.
They come home and they don't behave. Because children pick the environment
Yeah.
in
Yes.
which they behave.
They behave, yeah.
Yeah. So the school has got structures
Excellent,
there. And they know that all the other children are behaving. So they also have to behave. Why doesn't the child? You then have to ask yourself, if my son or my daughter is able to behave at school, then there's something wrong at home. You're not putting the guidance and boundaries in. You need to be firm with the child. The child has come with a plain platform plain platform. You need to write what you need the child to know psychologically on the child's mind for that the child to grow up with.
Excellent.
So that's your way of bringing out the child. So
Child,
if
yeah.
you start off with physical chastisement, that is what the child will learn.
Yeah. And also, Auntie, you said something very important. Sometimes you go to school evening
Yeah.
and they say, oh, he's as good as gold.
Yeah.
You know as a parent that your child comes home and there are issues. He fights with their sibling, but you're not sharing. And that's in the school. Can you tell me what you do different so that we learn together?
Exactly.
Because
You
we
need
are
to
talking
ask the
about consistency. So the child who goes to school, who got two siblings, they come in there, he's the oldest, he fights them, he bullies them. He goes to school, he doesn't do it. And the school is saying, oh,
child is
or
as
Kosi
good as
good as
gold.
gold.
Yeah, yeah.
He's sat, and you have the issue, but you're not sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you share, you say, oh, sometimes I have challenges. You don't have to give more details.
Because schools also offer parenting
Parenting
classes.
classes and advice.
And
So that
advice. Yeah,
Yes.
schools offer. Because you haven't come in contact with
Contact them.
them, you wouldn't know. But schools offer,
Offer.
from primary school
But auntie,
and
it's not
above.
good. I don't think that's a good thing.
about what?
'Cause I'm not gonna if
You
when
think your child will be stigmatized
No,
or
it's not. It's
will
not
be
about that.
labeled?
But when you have parental, classes, isn't it? I'm not gonna. The schools they like to go in your business. So when they find out everything, you don't know. It can be complicated, and they could get social workers involved, and then it will just
All right.
break the family.
No,
apart.
they
No, let's go back again before you come to that one so that you understand why it's important. A child who's got challenges, you can never. It's like when you're putting something on hot water, something is boiling, and it's not you're going to get the steam. If the child does it at home and you parent you see it, yeah, and you don't report to the school, or they go to school and you know the same issues are happening at home, but when the school says, "Oh, my child is not like that," yeah, you are not helping your child because he's going to fight. What you are saying, Rhoda, is the difference we all have to learn as parents to learn is that for anybody to recommend something for you means that something is not working well for you. Maybe the way you discipline your child, where you have a child who display behavior differently from school at home. There's an issue. You cannot hide it. And the fact that you will be going to classes doesn't mean that you are going to be sharing your
because
business.
they're offering for everybody.
For everybody.
Like strength. There's a program called Strengthening Families.
Yeah.
It's a course that even I can go for that course.
Yeah.
And I can offer that course as well. And it's a course for all parents. you don't, and there's one called caring dads.
It doesn't mean that you
Caring
are bad.
dad means that the father, just for that to just, go on, form positive relationship with the child, learn more about how to emotionally meet the child's needs and everything. So it's not necessarily that people will be in your business. If they're offering it for everybody, people in the community, they'll tell people that this is what we're offering, come. And just come and have a chat. They have parent group and all of that. So you go there and you have a chat and they have all these things. This Strengthening Family is about 13 weeks. And you get a certificate and everything. But it's very, very good. Any parent would benefit from having that course. Because we don't know everything. Nobody parent comes out with, goes on a course for parenting when they start having children. We do it as we go along. So, but nowadays there's help out there, So it's important. It's not about knowing your business, but it's about accepting what is there and then using it for your children. Because especially in our community, we cover things up, and then by the time you realize things have blown out of proportion, and then what do you do next?
That's where, Rhoda, what you said. Sometimes when they get out. And the child go in and said, there's some bruising. They ask, my dad hit me. Then that one you're hiding up is come out because there's something which is bothering you, which is happening at home, and maybe you're not able to do it, and maybe you take a belt or something, whack the child. Sometimes the usual excuse when there are other siblings, you hear, when you go home, say it's your brother who hit me or sister. Maybe the friend did it.
Because
or they go to school and say, he had
my dad said I should say.
My dad said that I should say my sister hit me.
My dad said I should say my sister hit me. Yeah, they do. They do. In our nature of work, we see it every day. When children say that, yeah. So and you can't coach a child. They will give you up. So it's important that you've all been children before. You know how it is. So you don't coach a child, And so let's look at what the law says about smacking children, Uncle. So should I leave it with you? What the law says about what is the law on smacking in the UK? Because I remember I've been to many places. I remember I went to see a guy. And then he said to me, the guy said the dad hit her, the child said the dad hit her with a wooden spoon, right? And if you're in social services and if the paper comes before you and it says, dad hit me with wooden spoon, I will go out and investigate. I have to go out and investigate.
Use of implement.
Because it's a use of implement, right? It says here, it is unlawful for a parent or a carer to smack their child, except where this amounts to reasonable chastisement. The defense is laid down under, you wouldn't understand, by Section 58 of the Children Act 2004, but it's not defined in legislation. So this is the defense that people use. When you go to people's houses, they say, but I smack. Some people say, I only just give a little smack. So that way, I'm not coming to take your child, but then we have to think about what led you to lose control to smack. How is parenting for you? Is it too much for you? Because for you to raise your hand to smack, you've lost control. You haven't got control, because if you did, there are ways you find the child should be able to listen to you before you get to the point of using your hand. Because when they tell you, Akosia, stop, pine.
Sometimes they will say they give the warning sign. So when you're talking about raising your voice, you're chasing the child, then it's going to the situation where the child maybe is going to put himself or the sibling at risk. So the argument is that was the only way to do it. So what Auntie was talking about is we might move into what we call reasonable chastisement. Which sometimes it's easier for any of us to sit here and say, do it this way, do it that way. Yes. It should be a way of if you make it as a rule of thumb that anytime I say one or two, unless I'm punching or taking my belt, then you are going into the gray area of physical abuse. So sometimes people will raise their voice. People will go in there And I think it depends upon the age of the child, or even depending. Some of this physical thing is like, if we're going to hold the child and shake or use an implement, then it's going to the borderline of abuse. So it's not reasonable. So the reasonable one could be, if, for instance, let's take a situation where you hit a child, yeah, or a child says, you do what you assume, yeah. Let's put it this way, scenario. You assume to be reasonable, and it ends up in an injury, yeah. A complaint is made because the child has gone to school or somebody's seen it
with red eye.
with red eye.
And
It's
the
not
child
reasonable.
is so angry that they will say, "My dad hit
My
me.
mother hit me.
Or my mom hit me."
So we all have to learn that some of these things are there for you as a guideline, but you have to also make a decision because people have argue about this thing to say, "Oh, you are taking our rights." Yeah, nobody's taking anybody's right from them. You are
But you
responsible.
can see that the UK has been accused so many times
Yeah.
of going against Article 19 of the Human Rights,
Rights, yeah, which is the
Act,
family-
which is that we have to put in so much
Ma-
to prevent violence against young people or children.
Yeah.
And in the same vein, we are saying reasonable chastisement.
Yeah.
Let me just say what it says here in Children Act 2004. It says that it talks about reasonable chastisement in section 58. It says, in relation to any offense specified in subsection 2, battery of a child cannot be justified on the grounds that it constitutes a reasonable chastisement.
Yeah. So the
So
battery here
the
is what?
battery. Did you see the things going around this where WhatsApp going around about a young nanny hitting a child baby?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I was so that's no. Even a few days ago, someone sent me one again.
Is it like she's black and
Yeah,
she's
oh.
saying
There's a
my
Chinese
God,
woman
that
as
one.
well
Yeah, that
hitting.
one.
I saw that. Oh no, the black one. That was so
the black one was
disgusting.
I
bad.
saw the black one.
That was
I
so
was
nasty. When I saw that, I said,
Zambia or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
that one she was
No,
prosecuted,
the
isn't
small
it?
toddler,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
but
How
in
dare
Zambia,
No, that one he was kicking the child. That one is way
That's
abuse. Yeah?
beyond, man.
That one is not.
That's
It's
just
not.
abuse, yeah.
Yeah, that a couple of years ago. Yeah.
There's another one come up just recently.
I was-
And the parents put cameras there, surveillance cameras.
Yeah.
That's a baby.
That's
And another one as well that I saw. This woman is a childminder, right? And she took the baby from mom, and then went in the lift with the baby. And mom said goodbye to both of them nicely, and she started hitting the child. I couldn't understand why she started hitting the child. For no reason, she started hitting this child. And when she saw mom, everything was fine. Did she not know that she's being recorded in the lift? But I don't know. So that's why it's important to live in.
child
That's
is
a
just-
different thing in terms of leaving your child in appropriate adult care. That's a different thing altogether. Maybe we'll talk about that in child care, child minding, and all of that. But that in itself is so cruel. I couldn't understand.
Especially
But
when the child is so
It's
young.
so
as
young.
well.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
the child will not be able to, and those are things we talk about. Because if you take the example Auntie just gave, you can never. It's an abuse. There's no discipline there. He's abusing the child, and the problem is not with the child; it's with that person, the adult. Is it? Yeah.
So in this country, do you think the question being asked is, can a school, if that's the case where we're saying smacking and things like that have got no definition in law, are we saying then that can a school, nursery, or a person providing childcare smack a child?
No.
That's
You see?
not your child.
So you see the double standard. You as a parent can use double chastisement. The child goes to school, they cannot do it, and you see the contradiction. When at home, I'm hit. When I go to school, they say I'm not supposed to hit children. That's what happened in my house. So it's a learned behavior. I'm being hit. So if my friend is doing something or saying something I don't like, why shouldn't I hit? When I misbehave, mommy hit me, daddy hit me, my brother hit me. So why shouldn't I do it? You see the contradiction.
Yeah.
So we are setting up double standard for these children, and that's why we all have to learn, because children don't live at home alone. They live in different. They live in school. They go to nursery. They go to school. They go to family, friends, and we have to kind of think about this. So because we are in a world where we share things, you go and leave them for aunties' children because you are working, and because you have been hitting the child, he takes it to the home, and they say no, we can't keep him here because he's causing trouble or because he's hitting the children. But what we are not learning as a parent is that because you every little thing you just hit your child, it becomes a behavior. So sometimes
without hitting, the child doesn't listen.
That's very good.
So then when you take the child to school, the teacher is not allowed to hit the child. So then he won't listen. Then the child is labeled with a behavioral problem. They say, oh, this child has got behavioral problems. And they find all the necessary names in the books, all the large names in the book to label your child. Because at home, you've hit this child for so long that if the child is out of your care, the child doesn't behave. It's in another person's care, but they're not behaving. And the person cannot hit them. So then what do you do? The child then becomes out of control.
Yeah, that's true, because like I've heard of things where, let's say a teacher's trying to tell off a child, or they're getting shouted at by the teacher. They'll be like, you're not my parent, you can't do anything. All you can do is keep me back. By the end of the day, I can still act the way I want to. Like, it doesn't, like the teachers, they have, like, what they can do to kind of like punish the child or tell them off is very limited. So the children think they can just get away with stuff because they're, like, let's say for example, they're getting like beats at home, because they're so used to that as a form of punishment. When they're seeing a more minor punishment towards their behavior, they're thinking that, oh, it doesn't matter, as if they can like get away with it now. So yeah, that's very true.
Thank you. We've got a few people there. Somebody saying, we got Nashome saying it's a very good topic. We've got, hi, I am Nana Sapong as well. And quite a few people are watching on there. Yeah, so, I mean, it's very, very interesting. And I cannot stress enough, especially from my own cultural background, that we need to accept. Last time, I don't know if I still have it on my thing, because I do collect a lot of safeguarding issues, and I'm doing research in safeguarding. Last time, my colleague sent me a WhatsApp clip. And what does the WhatsApp clip say? Nigerians have gone to the Nigerian embassy, and they are very angry, and they are asking their High Commission to tell the UK government that smacking is acceptable, or hitting their children is acceptable in their country. So we should stop, because of that, because obviously we're taking a lot of Nigerian children. They're saying that the local authorities are taking a lot of their children for smacking,
and also intervening
and taking children away in safeguarding for smacking their children. So they want this accepted so that they can continue to hit their children or something of the sort. I haven't got the video. I'm sure it's on my phone. But what the response they got was that their own High Commission told them that if they cannot accept the laws of this land, they should go back to Nigeria and live. Because you can't start off, can you imagine making it a window that you should just hit your child, acceptable, that you can just hit your child? Children will be dead. And there's a lot of research shows that there's grave impact on your children. And I think when we started our informal discussions, you all said a few things about child going to school and becoming rebellious. A child who's hit normally can become rebellious. It affects them emotionally. And so, but I don't want to go into the impact yet. I think what I want to ask is, what constitutes a criminal offense? When does smacking become a criminal offense?
All right.
When does smacking become a criminal offense?
If you take it with smacking, if you are using something will become excessive, and there's first and foremost there's bruise or there's mark, a child goes to school and shows a teacher and says I was smacked, and you see the fingers there, and I don't know how much you have done it to leave a print there, or sometimes red eye where you could see that the person has been hit. Sometimes somebody will twist the ears to the center.
I forgot about ear twisting. Has anybody had their ears twisted? Your ear, they will twist your ear. Your ear will make some noise.
And some children can even result in ear whatever later. So all those things which either you use an implement or you do physically where it leaves a mark, if they can evidence, or if the child can say that is there and you admit, that could cross the boundary. Or sometimes they will depend upon how serious it is. You can go and do medical.
Yeah.
And sometimes in doing the medical, you realize that it's not only that one. There have been so many things on the.
Yeah. So when they say, sorry, you speak in a minute, but I'm just telling you, as Uncle is speaking, we'll just talk about the practical aspect, the social service, and the aspect of it. If a child comes to the notice that the child has been hit or physically chastised, like for example, coming in with the ear, or child says the child will be will have a medical depending on the seriousness of the disclosure. So the child has made a disclosure, child taken to hospital, and then we'll do a medical. First of all, when the child does that, you will realize that you go to school to pick your child and you're told you can't take your child home.
What kind of...
No,
I'm sorry, but that's how it works. You will not...
if the child is came in with all bruises...
If your child comes home with bruises, for the child's safety, you will be told you can't take the child home. And then the child will have to go to hospital for medical. And this medical can be a bit intrusive because child will be naked, they look at the whole body, and this is where they will count everything. Bruises. A brother with their brother so many years, all the bruises, old bruises and stuff will be coming. And it shows, they will count it. And the doctor will mark all of it and look at the child's, the whole body to examine, what the child's experiences and what the child has been going through whilst living with you.
Right. I think, can I also throw in here, because I was going to say this when I was doing the research, which I did not say, that children have bumps and bruises. Bumps and bruises, sorry.
Yeah.
So we are not saying that when a child, that's why as parents, I remember when we started this, we talk about physical abuse. One of the things we talk about is when your child has got a bruise, whether they fall or there's something, and you are taking them to school or to a carer, and you've seen it, you got to tell the person.
You need to tell.
So that it's not like
you're hiding it.
Yeah. So that you go and pick up the child and there's a bruise and you say, oh, you caused it. You could see that this is a 2 days bruise. So why are you saying you brought the child in the morning, I've caused it? So we are not talking about children who have had accident or children who have fallen or something you have known, or they are running and something has scratched them, or they've fallen and you could see the bruise. We're not talking about that one. But we are talking about something which has been caused deliberately. Something because you used to implement. So we do the distinction. Sorry.
So when the medical is taken, of course, the child medical is taken, this is where the age comes in. If a child is a 2-year-old child or is a 3-year-old child, the doctor will take into consideration the fact that this child is a child who's active, and therefore the explanation has to tally. So it has to be consistent with the child's injuries. So if your child is, for example, a baby, right, and you tell me that the child fell off the bed, the child cannot crawl. So how did the child fall off the bed? So the child, even if the child is 2 years old, the doctor will look at the physical ability of a 2-year-old child and compare it with the injuries or the explanation that is being given. If it's inconsistent with the explanation, then they will conclude that it's deliberate. So don't think about going to lie because you'll be found out. So it's important that the best thing is just not to injure or hit your child.
So my argument, what do they call them? And when it's not deliberate, what do they call them?
Accidental and non-accidental injury. Right? They will say this child's injury is accidental. Like I said before, I think I've said this before. I just had a baby who had 2 broken ribs. Right? But these 2 broken ribs, it could have been anything. Because it depends on we looked at the time that this child was presented to hospital. The child was presented to hospital when he was 2 years old, 2 months old, no, 2 weeks old. So then he couldn't move. It's not a child who will move. So any injury that this child has, it means that somebody caused it, because it's a baby who's totally dependent on adults around him to provide for the child's needs. So we took the baby, we removed the baby from parents' care, but we got an expert to look in all this and all the x-rays and everything. This woman was traumatized. You could see she loves her child. They've been looking for this baby for so long. So what happened was, this child was a big baby when he was born. It was over 9 pounds. So the bruises were sustained when he was born, but nobody noticed. Mother has taken baby home, and now bruises. When you put the child on the left side, child is screaming and crying. And now parents are being blamed that they did it. Nobody blamed them, but we needed to know. Obviously, you need to know if a child like that presents with injuries. You need to know. In the same way, if there's a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, the story you give has to be consistent with the injury. So if you smack the child in the face, you can't just go and say he fell down the stairs. Mm-hmm. Because if the child falls down the stairs, there's going to be grazing and things like that. On forehead. Place, yeah. There's particular places that the injury should be occurring.
Yeah.
So if the injury occurs here, then the doctor will be able to say that, you deliberately injured your child.
You threw something on the child.
Yeah. So it's very important that you have to be careful, because sometimes you don't do it on purpose. Accidentally, you want to smack the child. The child ran into something. How are you going to tell your story? How? That I was chasing after my child and my child got injured. I didn't do it. It was accidental. But you chased after your child. So it's very, very important as parents to control ourselves. That's what I say, that if you're angry, do not hit your child. Just leave it and count to 10. For younger children, what are the solutions that you can do? You can have...
you can take away their toys, or send them into a room by themselves, or whatever.
Yeah.
Time out.
Yeah, you can give
time
sit here.
And
I think what we have to do, are we talking about the...
Okay, just do the quickly. What crime, when smacking becomes a crime? So I'm just saying what has been said here. So it says a parent can be charged with a criminal offense if they harm their child under the following certain offenses, right? So I'll jump over this one because I think I've talked about the section 18 and 20 stuff, and then section 47 and all of that. But it says here that determining what charge will be made depends on the harm caused to the child.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
If a child has, if you can physically see marks on a child, that's when they take the child away. But sometimes there can be the mental effect can be way more than the physical effect. So if the mental effect is way more, you won't know that there's something wrong with the child, and that's when the parents keep on beating the child because they think there's something wrong with the child because the child isn't behaving. But it's actually because of the fact that they're beating the child that there's something wrong with the child. So and that can keep on going on for many years, and then you think there's something wrong with your child because you've been beating the child, and that there's something wrong with the child, but it's actually because you've been beating the child. So only when you see the physical effects, that's when you want to take the child away, but it can be mental more than physical.
Yeah, I mean, that's also...
I think it's interesting. What's your name again?
Ella.
What Ella said is quite... Sometimes you come across these things, and that's why we do what you call a holistic assessment, which means that sometimes you ask these questions. The child you are talking about could put up a behavior in school, or their children, when you are going around them and they hear your voice, they put their hand around them. Yeah. Those are the signs. And when you probe, because we have what we call direct work
with children. Yeah.
So sometimes you realize that when they hear certain words, or there are some children, there are some words you hear from them and they wet themselves or they run away. Why? Because that's what they hear at home. And when that comes, it's about hitting.
And even if you're doing if you watch all these child abuse stuff, even police this American movies, American dramas, investigations, you can see that when they work with the children, she will she will bring paper, and she'll be talking to the child. As an expert, I'll be sitting there, but I know what I'm getting from the child. That's what you do. We say do direct work with the child. And the child doesn't have to tell you, but from what is there, the drawing, the paper, the things, we call something like emotional words. You can put emotional words there, and the child will tell you, I'm upset. They'll pick up all the negative emotional words. Sometimes they will say they're happy, if they're unhappy or things like, tell me what happens when you're naughty at home. Kind of thing. Those are the things. So they will tell you stories and stuff like that. So you work with them. And also, for me, I like to pick babies up. We're not talking about abusers know where to hit. Yeah. So I do agree that there are emotional aspects of it, but because we are focusing on physical harm today, that's why we're talking a lot about. But I agree with what you're saying. There are emotional the parents who emotionally abuse their children, and that is even worse than anything. Physical, you can see. We're talking today about physical abuse that you can see when the child comes, and what will happen. You know what the law says about that. So I hope it does answer some of the questions. The question that you're asking. But it says here. It says that the guidance has suggested that common assault, because they will charge you with something called common assault. And I remember last week I saw a young person in Warsaw, and he said to me, "Oh, I didn't know that if I fought with another child, it's an assault." And he's 15. So I'm thinking, he should know by now that if you hit someone else, it's an assault. But then here it says that common assault, where injuries amount to no more than the following. So if a child presents with grazing, like graces, that can be deemed as common assault. Scratches, you would think it's nothing, because in our culture, it's nothing to scratch a child or pinch. Graze or pinch. Some parents pinch. The child who's naughty in the supermarket, you look on your left and your right, and you just pinch them a little bit. I don't know. So many people are guilty. I'm not saying I'm guilty, but people are guilty about that. There are children who will not listen, but it's how you brought that child up. Something like a minor bruising, swelling, and then reddening of the skin, and then superficial cuts as well, and then black eye. We said that a lot as well, and it goes. The list goes on and on. You could be charged with common assault. You want to ask something, Uncle?
Yeah, I think it's more of you are producing the evidence. And sometimes when we talk about this, as Auntie started, it's the processes. Before even they go off to do this medical, we talk about, there have been discussion with the school, social services, and maybe police. Yeah. So they will plan to say the child need to be medically examined. Then they can go back and put the evidence together. So for anybody to make that decision, means that they are concerned about something, and also the child has made what we call disclosure. They've said something more, either through direct work or when you went in there. That's the day the child feels that now mommy is not here, now daddy is not here. Now
that's why
brother who's an adult
have to be spoken to alone. The children are spoken to alone.
Then they come out of staff. So sometimes, yes, some of these things may go over, and some of the children, that's the time to get back, or sometimes generally they are being abused. So it's not just people go in and just do it. You have to have a reasonable evidence that you want to do further investigation. Yeah. So yes, these things, as Auntie is saying, it's about a certain degree, a set of evidence of consent for you to even do further to go, because it's not easy to go the medical. You can't just go the medical. What are you going to do with it? You got to go ahead. So for anybody to make that decision means that the evidence there, or the list which has been given, is of concern, and there has been probably a history.
Sometimes you will think that all these things we're saying is a bit extreme, and it doesn't happen. It happens. Especially, there's so many young people now who are being removed from their parents because of hitting and smacking. If you're not in social services, you wouldn't know. And what happens is, I remember we said it here before, that even though the law is not definitive and it hasn't said that you cannot smack, you as a parent need to use your own assessment. If the law catches you, it will turn around and bite you, because you've hit your child and accidentally you've injured the child. That's even worse. So, but then you can argue that, oh, but this is reasonable chastisement. For me, I don't think there should be anything called reasonable chastisement, only because I think that people can tune their children right from the beginning to their own ways. If you want to bring your child up in a certain way, right up from the beginning, you have that in your head and you can do it. If you bring the child up in a way that, oh, I just smack them a little bit, seriousness of reasonable chastisement, I may hit the child like this and I think it's very serious. Maybe you don't see it as serious. So to what level is reasonable? The word reasonable, to what extent it is what is A to you or what is serious to you may not be serious. It's different to someone else. So somebody may punch the child and for them they'll say it's reasonable chastisement. Or they'll hit the child with a chair and they'll say it's reasonable. Sometimes we'll just bang the hand, back of the hand. So, for the sake of doubt, let's just take away reasonable chastisement and make the law to say that, nobody should smack.
It can't be a general thing because it doesn't fit for everyone. So I understand that point. I agree with that.
Yeah. But because there are so many strategies you can use. There's so many strategies you can use to bring up a child without hitting them. People have tried it and it's worked and the children are doing well. I like.
Yeah. And I think, as we said earlier, it's always important that until you use a language, I will put the technical thing and come back. You do your own risk assessment.
Yeah.
Your own, everyone. We all live in a different environment. When you live in a house with 2 rooms and 6 children, the challenges are going to be different from people who have. It doesn't mean that we live in 4 bedrooms. Every child is God. They are not going to. But sometimes the stresses in the environment, brings stress for you as a parent and the children, the way they react. And that's why we all have to kind of have a rule where you do things, so that it's not the pressure of people doing things and hitting each other as a way of getting them over. Take a break.
Yeah. So we'll take a break. I think we've chatted a lot, and people
interesting.
It's very, very interesting. We're enjoying it. If we don't take we won't take a break. We want to take just 3 minutes break for refreshment and come back again. Please stick with that. I can see that so many people are just watching us. Ella's mom is here. Okay. So, Ella's mom, hi. Yeah, so stick with us and we'll just take 5 minutes refreshment. Please send your comments in and then we'll come back shortly. Thank you very much for sticking with us.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, we're back now. COP UK Radio. You've joined the Community Welfare Matters. Call somebody to tell them that we are discussing a very interesting topic here. It's about smacking. We are asking the question: does it really work? Does smacking work for us? Those of us who grew up with some nice smacks. What do we think about the whole thing? So, we were talking about the legal aspect of smacking.
In
the UK, of course. We know that in Africa, it's still happening.
Yeah.
If you don't behave yourself, you get smacked. I think that they've been a bit strict on that as well in Africa, precisely Ghana, in terms of hitting. Because I remember our teachers used to hit us so much. Seriously. Yeah. They used to hit us so much at school.
Oh my God, I got battered.
They used to hit us so much serious. Yeah, it was so serious. They used to take our money and all of that.
That's brilliant.
And it's probably happening now. But if we come here, we talked about what's it called? Smacking as a criminal offense, and we talked about where is
Trish, do you want to sit here?
Is deemed as an offense. The next offense is where the last one was common assault. Yeah, we're going to actual bodily harm. Yeah, when is an injury deemed an actual bodily harm? It says that when the child presents with loss or breaking of the tooth. So if you punch your child so hard that the tooth comes out, it happens though. It happens when the child presents with the tooth out. That is deemed as an actual bodily harm, and that obviously carries more serious offense. Believe me, parents, you will have a criminal offense on your name. So just be careful about that. Then if the child temporarily loses, it's a loss of sensory functions, like loss of consciousness, that's an actual bodily harm. A child presents with extensive multiple bruising, broken bones, that's also an actual bodily harm. Minor fractures, that's also an actual bodily harm. A child presents with minor but merely superficial cuts, that as well is serious. Psychiatric injuries, which is more than emotions, that brings us to what you said, when a child presents with psychiatric injuries. That's interesting though. So how will your child present with psychiatric injuries? And I think in times when we come to talk about emotional stuff, we can delve deep into that. Because if your child is presenting that, it's the experience that the child has had at home, the constant emotions, emotional abuse in the home, and your child can't present with psychiatric incident, that can be taken as actual bodily harm. That is very serious.
And sometimes the way we look at it, or people look at it, whether school, police, social services, even the GPs, when there are signs, so there's signs that the child become nervous, the child is not able to sleep, the child is not able to eat, and it's being connected that the child is hit, or the child, they scream at the child, or anytime you are even having a normal chat with the child, they say, why are you trying to tell me? So you cannot balance the child to see. So it's like a child who's always disturbed because he or she is misbehaving, you are trying to discipline them, and they see it as so all those things could be put
abuse in the home.
Environment, and you say, look, something is not right here.
The child is paranoid, because I know I had a child who presented with this description here, psychiatric injuries. This child was self-harming. If a child is going through sexual abuse, so basically if a child is going through abuse at home, that could cause a psychiatric problem for this child, for that child. This child was going through sexual abuse by the father. It was perpetrated by the father. And so she was self-harming. She was self-harming through cuts. And then she tried to walk in front of the road. She tried to what, she's paranoid, she thinks people are talking about her, and all of those things. That is can be deemed as this is grievous bodily harm. Grievous bodily harm. So that's even a more serious one, offense. And it goes on and on. So you have grievous common assault, grievous bodily harm, and actual bodily harm that can be stuck against you. And I've seen parents who've been put behind bars for even counterback, just for the initial stages when the child discloses that they've been injured at home. So in this case, what happens to an accidental injuries? For example, a child pulls the kettle and the hot water pours over the child. Is that seen as a grievous bodily harm or?
No, I think that's why sometimes when we are doing assessment, and as I said, if you have children, where you place the kettle, even when adults, where you place the kettle in the house, it's important, because hot water doesn't know whether you are adult or
a child.
Accident could happen. You could slip on the floor, and so those things are common sense things we all do at home. Where you put your knife, you wash the knife and everything.
You have to be careful and put it away.
How you do the floor. You as an adult, you are going to do a hot tea, and you slip, and you left it there also on the floor, and you just walk away. So those are simple things we all have to watch around. So accidents do happen, but it's about the things you can prevent. So that, especially when you have children, then it comes into that lack of supervision, isn't it? If you as a parent, you are unable to do it, and because of that it causes accident, you might not have done it, but because you were not supervising or
lack of supervision. That lack of supervision is also taken seriously. When social services are considering your assessment, one of the things that can be said is put there as a concern against you as a parent is lack of supervision. If you're not able to supervise your child, you go somewhere, and then for example, you're pushing a pushchair with your 2-year-old. You have a 5-year-old. Your focus is on the 2-year-old. You don't hold on to the 5-year-old. This child is running around all the place. You're standing there, squeezing meowing your telephone, or squeezing your telephone, or touching your, playing with your telephone. That's lack of supervision, because your child will injure him or herself, and then you will get into trouble. So that's seen as bad parenting as well. So it's important that we as parents, we are very, very careful about these things. One thing that we haven't said, Uncle, which is very common, is biting. Parents bite. Yes. Yes.
So you're gonna eat your child?
Some parents I've seen parents who have said, he beats me and I beat him back.
No, that's a stretch.
Look at adults, and Uncle, have you not come across a parent bite before?
It's true. Especially the age range,
Yeah.
The age range.
It's true.
This was somewhere, I've come across cases, let me put it that way, so that I don't go too close. I've come across cases where what auntie is saying, and it's teenager, So the mother's allegation was that this teenager was trying to headlock her, and definitely he was a big boy.
So she had to bite him.
The mother beat the boy proper. He beat the boy, and it was a
bleeding.
Our self-defense.
Yeah, because and those are the
right.
things. For it to get to that side, if your teenage child could fight you, you are losing control.
You've lost control.
You have to find a way of being in charge, and if you have to even call the father or somebody to take him out, or you walk away, because once you get into that physical stuff, unfortunately, because he's a teenager, depending upon who hurt who,
you get in trouble,
Uncle.
Get in trouble. It doesn't matter if
and
you
they will
get
say,
in trouble,
all right,
because that's the child.
Especially when children pull out things on parents. A child take a knife to try to threaten the mom to get something. Or,
parent abuse. I always say we have to do a program on parent abuse.
Or give statements. Sorry, police will say give a statement. And you say, oh, I don't want my child to be criminalized. Next time you pull it again, and you don't want to, but you have to find a way of resolving that tension. So coming back to this issue,
we've seen biting.
Sometimes they use as self-defense. But and I've seen this one I was talking about, the beating was so much that the flesh nearly came out because that said the mother said that's the only way for me to be able to my child to stop. More or less, the child was trying to strangle the mom. So it's about also teenagers taking responsibility, and for that to get to that extent,
you've lost control.
What kind of relationship is happening between the teenager and the
mother? Yeah.
No, so it's sad.
The poor mother, because when you become teenagers, obviously you're very strong.
Yeah.
You take your toll and lose little me in your armpit trying to struggle me. So the only way she can save herself is to
bite you.
You bite.
Yeah? and I don't think the police, they have to kind of tell them both off. But because the children came into care, there were things. He would not even talk to mom because it shows that the relationship is broken down.
Really, that's the relationship is broken down.
And it's sad when it gets to that. So biting, it's
for it to get to that stage, it means that there's something's gone so wrong, you know. So, but we've seen biting. Some parents have beaten their children before, and even younger children, you know. And they say, "Oh, he beat me, so I wanted to show him that you can't bite." If you bite somebody you bite him back. And the bite marks will show. So a 4-year-old goes to school with a bite mark, and then he goes, "Mommy did it. Mommy did it." Oh yeah, if they've been to nursery, and 3-year-old will go and they say, "Mommy did it. My mommy did this," and they will ask all the questions and go back, and he keeps saying, "My mommy did it." I had one young person who had 5 fingers on the face like that. And each time you talk to him, he goes to me, "Mommy did it." Yeah. When he goes, says, who did I mentioned and I goes, "What happened here?" He goes, "Mommy did it." Mommy did it,
the
so they believe the child.
I also heard of case where it's interesting about, remember Auntie was talking initially about consistency, a left-handed carer, let me put the carer, left-handed carer. The same thing, the child was 3 years. But the left-handed carer slapped the child with the left hand, and you could see. So when he said he called the carer auntie, did it? It was there. But when this, the reason why it came, because the carer needs to go somewhere, right? And because she hit the child, I think the child wet themselves as they were about to go. They were worried that when they take the child to the place, and she was delaying, and the person who said, "You just go, I'll sort out," and he rushed in there. The person became suspicious, and they realized, and the child rushed and embraced
the other person,
and said, "Auntie did this," and it was there. The person is left-handed. The evidence was there, and that's history. What happened after? So we are talking about physical chastisement. You lost it as somebody.
You lost it as a
and
parent.
you've gone to the sense that you hit the child so much that evidence is there. If maybe it has been in the evening, they would have gone, because otherwise the child will not go to the nursery. They will
the next day they won't send the child to the nursery. Some parents do. When they head the child, they keep the child home and say, "My child is ill." You know, but remember, it's stuck in the child's head, so the child will talk when they go back to school. They will still talk.
And that's why sometimes when you are doing some work with these children and you come here, you raise your hand, the child scream. Why? Because that's what they do. When they see this, they think you're going to hit them. And those are the things sometimes when you are able to get used to the child, some children will tell you, during the age, "Don't hit me like daddy or my sister," and they're giving more information. They might be 3 years, but come here. Because when they see this, it's hitting.
They react unnecessarily,
And sometimes you probe later, and so it's all the same. You got to learn.
So NSPCC has given some guidance here, and one thing he's saying, he says it can be tempting to think a smack sorts out problems or incidents like disobedience and biting. However, it does nothing to teach your child how you want him or her to behave. Which we've all said it here before. Instead, it says it gives a bad example of how to handle strong emotions. So this child is picking up from you that when she's upset or there's problem, the way to handle it is to hit somebody. So next time your child goes out or the child is growing up, they grow up with the fact that, or with the example that you hit when you're upset, because that's what they've seen the mother do or the father do. Yeah, so they learn that behavior. Also may lead children to hit or bully others. So the child who's a bully at school, sometimes you can see some children are they're really bullies. They're just, and that's a facade. Because they themselves have been bullied at home by their parents. When you look at some of the adverts, you see a father talking in the child's face. You know, you're useless. That's emotional bit. You're useless. You can't do anything. You will never amount to anything. You never achieve. That's the physical, the emotional abuse bit that the children go through. But they've grown up with it. They've grown up with the fact that they're hit. So if they go out there, like what is going on now with all these black on black issues, and that's, I'm not saying that's all the reason why, but that's aspects. That's one of the reasons why young people behave the way they do. They have no insight into conflict resolution. They don't know how to resolve conflict.
Which is very, very important, Auntie. I want to add this issue about conflict resolution. Once you start hitting, you have not explained, you have not done it, bam. So this child learned to realize that the only way I defend myself
is to hit
back
somebody.
Or to hit. So sometimes these emotions are developed consciously, unconsciously. So when the child is at an age where he or she can fight back, that's why sometimes
the child turn on the parents, and they start fighting back.
Because now I'm a big boy. No, I'm not the 3-year-old you have been hitting all this time.
You used to be. And by this time, this child has grown up with anger. They built in anger. I remember very well, this is true, you know, I remember very well that when I was very young, I was living with my stepmother and my father. And the abuse was so much that I remember I would go and stand. There was a mango tree in my house. And I was very, very upset each time, you know, I got hit and I had difficulties. I would stand there by myself, contemplating and saying things like this man, when I grow up, I will do this, I will do that, I will curse him. And I said all sorts of bad things, you know, because I was planning that as soon as I hit a certain age when I can fight back, I'll fight him. Because I was so upset as a child, and I built, you know, when I
emotions,
built emotions that was going on through my head. I wouldn't want I always say that I don't want my child to plan that against me,
Definitely.
because it's very scary.
Yeah. It's not even just plan that against you as well. Like when parents hit their children, they go back to school and then they have a friendship group. They will talk about their parents in a bad way to their friends, and then it will be like no one else in the group is talking about their parents, but that one person is saying, "Oh, I hate my mom. My mom does this. My mom does that," and it's a bad thing. And it gives you don't know if his friends or her friends could go back to their parents and tell them what.
This is what
and it just gives you a bad impression. So
like,
you don't want your own child talking about you like that.
And because then the child builds some kind of hatred against you. And I remember very well, I grew up not having any emotions for my stepmom, which I'm sitting on radio and saying that, but I didn't have any emotions for this woman. I did not have any empathy. I didn't have anything for this woman, and it was so sad because I could go to Ghana and I wouldn't go there to see her because that thing was in me for so long, and it shouldn't be that way. So I don't want any child to feel that way about me, so I go out of my way to do good. And one thing also in our culture, if you've noticed, if you're hit, you're not told why you're being hit.
No explanation.
You don't understand why you're being hit. But you remember, children are children. They don't understand. They're learning. We are caretakers of these children, and we need to tell them and teach them the things of the world. So if a child does something wrong and you want to issue your discipline or form of discipline, you need to explain this child. Do you understand why I've asked you to sit in that corner? It's because you said the F word. And F word is not acceptable. For that reason, you're sitting there for 5 minutes. And when you finish, you need to say sorry. Or because you behave this way, I'm having you apologize in front of everybody. Because you were rude in front of everybody. Therefore, you apologize in front of those are the things that you need to explain to your child. You don't just say, and they're screaming and they're shouting. Because we're all guilty sometimes. Because sometimes these little midgets can just get on your nerves, but not losing it is very important.
Auntie says something which we need to also talk about, age appropriate. So, for instance, in explaining to the child and the type of punishment or the consequences, sometimes that's why we all encourage to start as early as possible. And the things we do, we shouldn't, as parents, always concentrate on the bad. So when the children are at home and they are doing things, always the only time you go and speak is when something is going wrong. When they do something which is good, don't just ignore it. Very good. You clean today here. After what do you call it? You tidied your toilet. Keep it up. But it's not when they've left it and somebody's tripped and they've hurt themselves, then you go and bam.
We have a habit of not commending on the good things that our children
it's
do.
It's not balanced. No, the child see that. It's like always, that's what children say, they pick on me. No, because you got to, so when the children come to school and they've danced very well, maybe they've come with a good report or something. Oh, I love you, keep it up. You embrace them and all that. But it's not when they got a max or the phone and made a complaint
in school.
Then you put them at the corner. Come on.
No, Uncle,
it's not balanced.
Yeah, I think that as well. But some parents, they recognize the good but make it into a bad thing. That they'll say, let's say, for example, if Trish was my daughter and I said to Trish, oh, well done, you cleaned today. Oh, this is so surprising. No, let me say, for example, in the school thing, the thing that you said about the reward. Let's say if you got a good reward and you came to school and you got a certificate. Yeah. I'll say, oh, well done, keep it up. Oh, this is the only first one you've got. You never get them before, so why is it today that you've gotten some? Like,
why can't you do this all the time?
Why can't you do this all the time? They'll make it bad, and instead of the child being praised, they'll be praised and put back down. Do you know what I mean?
No, it shouldn't be sarcasm.
Yeah, it shouldn't be
because no, it shouldn't be sarcasm in the sense that I do hear what you're saying, but I think we all have to learn, because sometimes because we are different and things happen, these things shouldn't be like a rule to use that do this that way. We all have to sit down sometimes to say, what's happening around me about the children? Why is this thing happening? And maybe the child gets so angry, or sometimes if you started early, or even if you haven't started early, we all sometimes have to have a frank conversation with our children when there are challenges in the house, depending on the age. So that sometimes some of these things could be addressed, because what may happen in house A is not the same as house B. But you have to know, because for instance, if a child comes in and they sometimes the children say things, but you don't listen as parents. Daddy, why is it always you are doing this? The child might have had the courage to say that. You know your child is not childhood bold to say, why you always we have to be humble as parents, and also listen. And maybe balance it and say, Kojo, as Auntie said, because when I ask you to do this, you don't do it. That's why your brother is copying. And I don't want you to do this, because when you go to school, your teacher said that you are not like that at school. So why do you come home and do this? The child will sit down and maybe you get explanation.
It's about dialogue, isn't it? It's about us talking more.
Of the age.
We are guilty.
But sometimes you assume that, it's a 5-year-old, doesn't know. You'll be surprised some of these things.
And also sometimes we assume.
And you have time for them. The things they will tell you.
They will tell you,
And sometimes when you go back and play back to the parents, about 4-year-old, did my child say that? Yes, because sometimes it's about drawing, it's about faces, it's about when he's angry. And you say, who makes you angry? He will this. I remember I was dealing with some child, 12-year-old, and we talk about who is important to me. The person important to me is self. The self was middle, and every nasty thing was coming from self. This is a child who's got serious problems. So he doesn't care if he's going to smoke and they're going to hit him.
So he puts self in the middle.
Self is the middle.
Oh my goodness.
Who in this world? And there were people I was expecting the child to talk about, but it didn't come out. It's self. And when we explore the self, it shows what we call deep-rooted emotional behavior, which is started, God knows, by 4 years. So this child is what we call, excuse me to say, damaged child. Because, and you work with children like that differently, because they don't know boundaries. So far as you are concerned, they go missing. You can't compare the same child with somebody who goes to school, come in and eat, and when it's 9 o'clock, they've shut their thing. This one, sometimes 2 o'clock, that's where they want to watch their video, and 8 o'clock, you, the mother, attempt to make me go to school. That's why I'm going to fight you. So we are talking about different environment, different homes. Children who have gone through some trauma because it's happened years, and maybe for some one reason it hasn't happened. They are law to themselves. So sometimes we work with extreme cases, But you're talking about, in quotes, what we might say average normal folks where you're having a bit of challenge. No.
Okay, so the other thing it says also is that if a child who is smacked at home, the smacking may encourage the child to lie or hide their feelings and avoid the smacking, which is true. So how many times people have lied because they know that they will get hit when they come home. They will lie and hide their feelings.
So they can't tell
Yeah.
their parents.
They have to make up stories when they come home because they know they will get hit.
And for example, like quite a lot of people do this, and I know quite a lot of people of people that do this. They will say, "Oh, mom, I'm going to my friend's house," and they'll be at a party, but they know that their
parents won't agree.
Won't agree. And that's
Or
what
the
makes,
parents' reaction
that's
to
what
them
makes-
wanting to
them
go to that place.
That's what makes people lie and rebel against their parents, and also just become worse.
Because if they lie, it gets to a point where they don't care anymore.
Yep.
They don't care if you catch them.
Yep.
And because at that time they got into the age where they can fight back. So then they don't care anymore.
Run away.
But it's important that as a parent you get into a relationship with your child where the child is able to tell you, I'm going, and then we negotiate.
Yeah.
We negotiate where you're going, what time you're coming back, who's bringing you back, who's there with you, who can I call if there's a problem. Because I don't believe in being so strict like that. Because if everybody is going, like all the friends are going, and you're being so strict without any reason, because this is what we do as parents sometimes. We'll say, okay, you can't go. Why? Because these children born in this country, that's what they do. Why? Why can't I go? But mom, why can't I go? What I hate is when I give you my reasons and you keep asking me why. That I hate, but that doesn't warrant a smack. It warrants the fact that I stand on my word and I say no, because I've already explained to you why. If you want to go and sleep over at a friend's house and I tell you I'm not comfortable with that because you have your bed, there's no reason why you have to sleep at somebody's house. I don't know these friends. I say, oh, but it's Kwame and Oko. Yes, Kwame and whoever. But the problem is I don't know the parents. I don't know what goes on in the house at night. Anything can happen in that house at night, in the middle of the night. And what if there's fire, God forbid? What if anything, stay in your home where we can all stay as a family. You don't need to go and I don't like sleepovers. That's my thing, so that's just an example. The next thing is the child. We've said that already. The child can make the child defiant and become worse. The child's behavior become worse. So discipline so the discipline then becomes harder. We've talked about that. And then it leads to a resentful and angry child. We've talked about that as well. And damages family relations if it continues for a long time. So as we said, we already said this already, which means it's true because some of us have lived it. And the outcome has been demonstrated already in our later years. Yeah. So there are so many people calling for banning on smacking. So how can we then bring out our children in a loving way without smacking? We haven't talked about effects. We've just talked about effects. So how can we then, bring up a road that wants
to say physical,
I think as what Ella said, I think having conversations with your daughter or son
like come to an understanding.
Come to an agreement as well will help them understand and help it'll make them think, oh wow, okay, cool, my mom's not aggressive anymore, so then it will help them listen more to their parents and obey their parents more than if their parents hit them all the time, they'll think like, okay, cool, then this is my chance to be even worse for them. Like, if that makes sense.
Adding on to Rhoda's point, I feel as if if the parent like the way they present themselves to the child, if the child feels as if, oh, like my mom's a good role model or my dad's a good role model towards me, and like they'll feel as if, oh, I don't need to rebel against them.
I respect them.
Like I respect them and I want to be like that because the way they're like presenting themselves to me, I want to be something like that. I don't want to be like a troublemaker. So I feel as if like it's a really good thing when the parents are good and positive role model to the child, and so they don't feel the need to do stuff against them or they don't feel the need to hide stuff to them. They want to have like a good relationship with them and that.
Yeah, because a child could be like, oh, my mum is always beating me, so why should I tell her this or why should I do this to make her happy?
So there's lack of trust then, isn't it?
She's always beating me. Why should I be good to her? Because you get nothing in return.
It's the fact that, let's say, when a child, obviously every child wants to be close to their parents, so like telling them everything. Like I wouldn't say like to be on that friend level, but a mother and let's say a mother and daughter and a father and son, they would like to be like
close.
like, not best friend, but best
kind
when
of.
people say best friends, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone knows, so that they can tell them anything.
A really strong relationship.
Very strong relation that they can tell them anything, even if anything happens in school, they can tell them. But some people feel like they can't.
Because they can't because
some people feel like they can't because they know that if they say something that they know their mum won't that they say something and they don't know if their mum approve or not, their mum could slap them and it'll just
because they're not trying to
trigger
understand.
them.
They have to
Yeah,
understand
okay.
first before they can come and say whatever they're trying to say. If not going to understand, then it can spiral out of control and turn into something like an argument or something bigger.
That's quite interesting hearing from young people. Call somebody to call somebody. We're almost finished. It's community welfare matters, and we're talking about physical chastisement or physical punishment. We're at the stage where we're talking about, solutions, and some of our young people here have given us solutions. We will work with them, and if we look at what NSPCC is saying, it says here how to discipline without smacking. And so give love and warmth as much as possible.
Yeah.
So if your child is being the worst child, you still have to give love and warmth because they are your child or they are your children. And if you throw your child out to the vultures, the vultures will grab your child and damage them. So you need to just provide that emotional warmth, and that will draw your child back to you. It's not too late if your relationship is broken down. I think you can work on it. Stephen, did you want to say something? It can be repaired. We as parents, somebody said we need to humble ourselves and also listen. We need to learn to listen. It says have clear, simple rules. Because what our deficits are that we don't have clear rules. 1 minute we say this, the next minute we say that. Next minute we live by double standards. Even the law is double standards because law says reasonable chastisement. Therefore, we don't know the extent of the reasonable chastisement. And then if you smack your child, you get in trouble. So the debate goes on about the reasonable chastisement issue. However, in the interim, yes?
So to conclude, you think that beating children is wrong, or it shouldn't be allowed?
For me, I don't think you should hit a child because I think that there are ways. If we've done it before, I now know you shouldn't hit a child because I believe that there are ways in which you can bring up your children. Your children can be very difficult at times, but we can always
you can work around it.
We can work around it. Yeah. So if I don't agree with the issue about smacking and reasonable chastisement. I think that reasonable is really big, and it can be anything. It's really relative. So
people's reasonable could be different.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
It's just how they define it.
It's how
Like continuing hitting my child could be reasonable to me, but for Trisha,
it went out reasonable. So it doesn't work.
It's too broad.
So and also it says here we should be a good role model. I think we talked about that already. Because if you're building a relationship with your child, if your child is seeing how you're reacting, they will also learn. So when they go out there, they know that resolving conflict doesn't have to be aggressive. Verbally aggressive or physically aggressive. You have to praise good behavior. We've said so. Most of the things that NSPCC have said, we've said already. So it goes to show that we know what we're talking about. And I'm happy to blow my horn in that area. Uncle, Ali?
In it. You've got it right over the years.
Don't know.
So it says
as parents and as also workers.
So you ignore behaviors that you don't want repeated. So are they trying to say if the child goes out and doesn't come back or comes
I don't agree with
I wouldn't ignore it. I will highlight it. I'm sorry, NSPCC.
So basically, if your child does something wrong, you just ignore it.
No, I won't.
I think the ignoring is a balancing act.
You have
Do
to
you
talk
always
about
go in because you said you should come 7 o'clock and they've come 8? The day they came to something or they done something. So it's about explaining that, all right, because you went in, you came in 8 as agreed 7 with no explanation, you're not going out. That one is reasonable. You're balancing. You're making them learn. So the next time. Or
maybe when they say ignore, they're talking about not going on and on and on about it.
Sometimes sometimes you irritate the child. And even the word of God tells us that we should be as parents should not what? irritate our children. Sometimes the way we say things over, they get bored. They refuse to listen. Yeah.
Also, it says here, criticize the behavior, not your child. Because I hate it when people demonize their children. Do not demonize your children. This child is evil. This child is demon. This child.
I don't know why I gave birth.
I don't know why. You know, some of the words.
That one, you are causing a relationship difficulty with your child. Once they can fight back, they will tell you to say, "Oh yeah."
Parents, parents, listen. Children will wind you up. They are little people.
They are Saki.
They don't know what you know. That's why you're the parent. They're not your age. You're more mature than them. That is why you're the parent and they're the children. Do not get angry. Yes, I'll be upset, but because I'm human, I walk away and I come back. No, to think about how I'm going to do this. But if you get angry and you smack immediately, that's a problem. Not being a good role model and all the other bits that come with it. And labeling your child. You also label your child and you give your child names and all of that. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that.
Compare them with people and
you compare them with people and all of that. You can't do that. And it says distract your young children or use humor. You're like making fun of them. Oh no, actually distract your young children using when the little ones, if they're engaging in bad behavior, you can distract them and use humor to change the behavior. You don't have to be you don't have to be so strict. You also have to have, in terms of you have to have consistency in the home. So if you tell, some children are can be, I'm not saying they're naughty because I don't want to label them and use negative words, but if you say to your child, sit on that chair, that naughty chair, that child refuses to sit there, make sure that they sit. Like I had one child and I was teaching the child, I was with the mom, right? And when we were walking down, Mom was looking on the phone. I told the mom, excuse me, you need to come off the phone and see to the child. But then the child ran across the road and I said to her, you need to tell your child to go back. She's calling, so come, John, let me call the child. John, come back here. The child didn't listen, cross the road. I said, no, take the child back to where he came from, stand there, and you give him the instructions again. So you need to give the step-by-step instructions. Make sure your child has listened. The key thing is they need to follow the instruction. If you give up because they're not listening, the next time they will do it again and they will have their way. One thing you don't have to do is allow the child to have their way. Oh, this one, yes, I'm not here. That's how he is. Let's leave him. No. If they have their way little by little, they will grow up thinking the world belongs to them and they want everything to go their way. That's where you have the problem. Demanding. You need to make sure you are the adult and they are the children. That's the child and that's the adult. So take up your role. Allow your child some control and joint decisions. So your young teenager, you decide, you seek their views as well, and then talk to them in a nice, maybe if we do it that way, I think this is better. From my experience, this is what I've noticed, and this is what has happened in the past when somebody did this or this happened. So you need to give them that. You're giving them control. And what I believe is that if you make a decision with a teenager, they are likely to listen more than you going off to make the decision and coming to tell them. Engage them. Let your children participate in the decision making. All of these things, they're not in our country or from our background. What's the saying, Uncle? Children are seen and not heard. So we didn't. You children need to be patient with us because we didn't grow up with our our voice being heard. You have to keep quiet when you're passing and adults are sitting there. You keep quiet and you pass. You don't not whistle, talk. You have to tiptoe and pass by. So children are seen and not heard. Yeah, and the final one is if a punishment is necessary, the removal of privileges, timeout, and natural consequences are better. We talked about that already.
Let me add one thing before you go. That it's always important that these things are specific and the time is not too excessive. So, for instance, the timeout. If you ask a child to stay, 5-year-old to sit at the place 10 minutes, is going to warn.
It's too long.
It's too long. Yeah.
You don't punish a
The
child for so long.
Yeah. So sometimes, if they know, even if it's 2 minutes, and you make them sit down there, you calm down and later
Thank you,
explain.
Uncle Seth. Yeah.
So those are the things we need to kind of.
So when some parents, they punish the child, the punishment is disproportionate with the a crime that was committed, right? And if you do that, you don't have a lot of choices. You need to have a lot of options for your child. So if the child does something little, the punishment should be according to the offense. It shouldn't be bigger. Yeah, so big that the next time they do a bigger thing, what punishment are you going to give them? So it shouldn't be disproportionate with the crime committed. That's what I mean. So, for example, if you tell a child to sit in the corner, that's a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. That 2-year-old cannot sit there for 10 minutes. You have to start for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but make sure that they've done it. If you let them sit there for 10 minutes, you will forget, and then they will get up and go. It means that they didn't adhere to the rule. You need to let them sit there for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, sit there, finish, and then you tell them you finish your punishment and you need to come and apologize. Kofi, do you know why I asked you to sit in the corner? It's because you slap your brother. You're not supposed to slap your brother. Next time you need to talk each other. Go and apologize to your brother. Always make sure you have that ending. If you don't have that ending, and then let them hug each other and make up. So you're teaching your child conflict resolution right there and then. And
so at the same time,
we didn't know these things. Believe me, we didn't know. If we knew what we know now, things would be different.
And at the same time, that's why we were talking initially that you don't slap because you are slapping. I cannot tell a 2-year-old not to slap the brother. So sometimes it's about the double standards. It's okay for me to slap you because I'm in charge. But you can't slap. So we defeat ourselves and it doesn't work. So our environment and what we teach our children, the role model we've talked about, it's all important to bring up children.
So anybody has got any more contributions? It's been a very interesting discussion, and I think we'll end here because it's 8 o'clock. And people are tired. We'd like to go and come back again next week. And I think we'll discuss again. It will be about emotional aspects of parenting, and how we bring, we do behave at home and how you can emotionally harm your children and everything. We'll bring that up next week when we come. Thank you very much for joining us. You've been watching Community Welfare Matters on the COP UK radio, and it's been an excitement. You need to tell somebody share the link and watch us. You learn from us and we learn from you. Keep your contributions coming. We want to thank Uncle Seth and Ella's mom and every one of you who joined us today. Share on your pages the issues that we talked about today. Thank you and like our program. God bless you. Until next week.
Bye.